Okay, everybody, thanks a lot for coming. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Schreckies. I'm the chair of the Department of Political Science, and in a moment I'll introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Eric Button. But first, I want to thank the university's provost, Dr. Terry Martin, for providing us with the resources to put this event on. Those resources included money to buy the 80 gazillion cookies that are sitting outside right now. So when we're done, make sure you grab at least a couple of cookies. You can even take a few for the road, because if you don't, they wind up in the political science department, and I wind up eating them all. So you'd be doing me a favor if you took a bunch of cookies, and they're delicious cookies from Rick's. I also give special thanks to none other than Patrick Grimes for help getting this all set up. We're here because in the year 2005, U.S. Senator Robert Byrd introduced, or rather I should say snuck into an omnibus spending bill, an amendment that would mandate that all institutions that receive federal funding, K through 12 schools and universities, all of these organizations spend September 17 talking about the United States Constitution. It's ironic because despite the fact that that amendment was introduced into a spending bill, there was no money attached for us institutions to comply with the law. But nonetheless, it gives us a chance to talk about the U.S. Constitution, a topic that Senator Byrd was so concerned that Americans knew so little, he introduced that piece of legislation. And there's just so much to talk about when it comes to the United States Constitution, including the oaths that government officials take to uphold it upon entering office, something that Dr. Button is going to talk about in just a sec. But first, by way of introduction for Dr. Button, Dr. Button earned his Ph.D. from the University of Arkansas in 2023. His research specializes in veterans policy. He is himself a United States Army combat infantry veteran of the 10th Mountain Division. And as a scholar, he's published his research in the journals Armed Forces and Society, State Politics and Policy Quarterly, Energy Policy, Peace and Conflict, Journal of Peace Psychology, and the Journal of Rural Social Sciences. His work has also been included in Auburn University's The Military Reach Review, a project that publishes and distributes research that is valuable to veterans and their families. Earlier this year, he won one of our department's teaching awards for being an outstanding instructor, and he is the past recipient twice of the Arkansas Political Science Association's Best Paper by a Graduate Student. And an Arkansas PSA Best Faculty Paper as well. Followed by a question and answer period, Dr. Button will now give his talk titled Oaths to the U.S. Constitution, Service, Sacrifice, and Scandal. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Eric Button.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Delete that. That's what I did. That's what it was. No, I'm good. Try not to run into it. That's a good start because I try to just be pretty chill with things. I try to also have fun, whether it's in class or not too much fun at conferences, maybe a different setting there, but I still just try to enjoy my work. So the opportunity to talk about the U.S. Constitution, I heard about it mostly last year, and I just thought it was something that I wanted to do, so I took my time thinking about a good topic, something that I could be interested in, but also folks could be interested in. So, I started building my slides here, and I thought, how would I want to start off my slide set? And I picked Justice Kennedy hoping maybe I could start with somebody that's moderate or bipartisan, I don't know. But yet, people will still debate whether he has his leanings one way or the other, so I mean, I tried. Anyways. All right. Oaths, well, we have oaths to the Constitution, sure, but other oaths have been around for a while, so maybe a little bit of background, right? Anybody heard of this Hippocratic Oath? What it generally is about? Like if you had to summarize it. Do no harm. And that's for the medical stuff, or you're for political science maybe. So it's been around a while, 2,400 years or so. Enough that he's got busts from way back when. So hey, he's a well-known guy, right? But important here, oath thought of as a code of ethics. So maybe we'll see echoes of that throughout the oaths to the Constitution. I mean, that's how old it is, even just the parchment there, right? All right. I've got some guys in my classes, you know how I do the Mentimeter stuff. It's not free either, I pay for it. I've got it set to survey mode so you can go through the questions even while I'm running through other slides. And I'll try to remember where I want to stop and show you your data. We get there. Why even take an oath to the Constitution? I mean, can't you just assume the position that you've been either elected to or appointed to? Call that good? I mean, any oath, really. So, Constitution, any Constitution, really. We like to think of that as a social contract. If you were to ask, maybe if you've taken any political science classes, right? Heard about Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Rousseau. They'd say, hey, a social contract, a civilized way to avoid the state of nature or just a chaotic system of being. So social contracts are very important for the sake of civilized and organized society, agreeing to a set of laws. You may not agree with all of them, but we live by them and abide by them. So a common shared sense of purpose. So an oath says, hey, I'll go along with that. I'll be sure to protect and defend that Constitution, among other things. So again, why have them take it? What does that get us? Hopefully, maybe a little bit of trust. If they're there to serve the people, can we trust that they're going to do a good job? Hopefully do it properly, do a good job at it. I've got a lot of examples of money seems to be an issue here. Bribery, other scandals, that is a little bit of an underlying theme there. So otherwise, amongst those in the job, so let's say military as an example, we all take that oath, and together, right, as their own community, we trust in each other to do our job well, to kind of look after each other, because lives are on the line there, and elsewhere, we'll see examples beyond just the military, right? So, I thought I'd throw in a little tangent. If we swear oaths to the Constitution, why change it? I mean, it's pretty good, right? Pretty nice, but we make changes every once in a while. So people have different views. What might be worthy of change? Perhaps expansion of rights, say civil rights, or just added processes. Right, at one point, we did not have a 25th Amendment. You guys are familiar with that process for perhaps removal of a president. So you'll have different positions on these things, but terms of office for Congress, that would be interesting. We already have that for presidents. You can only serve twice. Right? Some people, maybe healthcare rights, universal healthcare. What if we did have a convention of states? Would that be up for debate? Balanced budget, I've heard a lot about that. And then of course, people might have interest in changing how the Supreme Court structured their terms of office. So there's a map. Possibly some interesting trends on this map. A lot of green in the southern states. Not much effort along the west coast. Towards the northeast, failed. These trends tell us much. Maybe. But you can find support, not from everybody, but whether it's southern states, conservatives, you can go visit a page of Democrats supporting a convention of the state. So you're going to have different views as to why we might need a convention of the states, but we're probably a ways off from that still, so no worries perhaps. All right. I've mixed in a few short videos. All right. I thought, if we're talking about oaths, what do people do if they're wanting to become citizens of the United States? So one example of oath. A few videos to break up the slides and the talking.
So candidates, please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
I hereby declare
On oath
that I absolutely and entirely
renounce and abjure
all allegiance and fidelity
To any foreign prince,
potentate,
state or sovereign,
upon which
I have heretofore
been a subject or citizen,
that I will support and defend
the Constitution and the laws
of the United States of America,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear faith
and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States
when required by the law,
that I will perform
non-combatant service
in the armed forces of the United States when required by law,
that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction
when required by law,
and that I take this obligation freely
and I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
so help me God.
All right, that's it. It might be one of the longer ones out there, but you can understand some of the reasons behind that service in the military. If you even qualify, we do have selective service. At times, it'd be like if we need to ramp up the economy for wartime efforts, we might have to call people into service. So maybe from what jobs they might have had. So let's see what we've got so far. So far, a mix, children's. All right. Open enlistment. All right, I've got another veteran out there, perhaps current service member. Marriage vows. I did think about. I almost thought about adding that in, but there's only so much time, I guess. Confidentiality. That's an interesting one. Okay, so yeah. I figured there'd be some college folks here that their Greek life might involve something like that. Boy Scout oath. I almost threw that one in too, but. Right. What would we like to amend? Nice mix. Again, the Supreme Court, privacy rights, Second Amendment, speech. There you go, term limits. Okay. So people have mixed opinions on these things. I'm going to go back where I was maybe. All right, another interesting one I found, Civil War, how that turned out. We probably are aware of these things. So what do? We got roughly half the country that was kind of not on board with things. Others, okay, they're fine. But then, do we just accept folks back in unconditionally? Well, all right, so we at least came up with a bit of an amnesty oath for those who maybe didn't support the winning side. So these varied a bit, but generally, right, you would see some trends there. So I try to highlight some of the key texts there, because you'll see support and defend the Constitution. There'll be common themes there. But for the purpose of the amnesty oath, some very important points in there. Right. I know I had to do the Pledge of Allegiance when I was young. Some other folks, I'm sure. About, yeah, college age folks. Still some schools doing that. All right, it's probably a little mixed. I mean, I suppose you could always just opt out if you really wanted to. Is it the same as an oath? Well, maybe not for, about to enter, federal government position and whatnot. But it's interesting. You are kind of declaring some things. If you're too young, you might not even really know the full weight of what you're saying. So, other than different meanings for different folks, what are we really getting out of having students recite Pledge of Allegiance in school? You might see mixed opinions there. You're teaching them some things, learning about culture. Some say, oh, maybe it's indoctrination to some degree. All right, service, part 1. So, federal oath, good place to start. An interesting exception for the president. Why would he mention specifically to leave out the president for this federal oath? Well, we've got something in Article 2 of the Constitution. So you probably don't want a statute trying to override what we got in the Constitution. With the president, plus it's a little different. It mentions specifically the office of the presidency. So some positions, all right. Oh, Obama. All right. So his first inauguration, him and Chief Justice Roberts, kind of a little off with each other. Nope, not blaming one or the other. They probably were both a little just kind of. So they decided a couple days later, let's just redo that. Make sure we get it right. No worries. All right. They're not the only ones. Taft. My tale of two Chief Justices. First, when he's elected as Chief Justice, kind of mix it up a little bit, but 20 years later, there's the Chief Justice then, Taft, and he messed it up just a little bit, nothing too crazy. So when he's administering the oath for Hoover, anyone know Harry Truman's full middle name? No, it's not Ship, like the justice said. So he was given just the letter S for a middle name. He has some relatives that had S in their name, and so they wanted to honor more than one of his relatives, so they just gave him S. That's it. So, hey. Eisenhower twice, but not as big of a deal, perhaps, even just adding in an extra little and somewhere in there. No biggie. Oh man, Obama again? All right. So why would he have to do it twice for his second inauguration? Well, that time it just happened to fall on Sunday, the particular date of importance. We'll get to that. And we do the ceremonial swearing in, and maybe that's scheduled for a Monday or something. So you don't want to leave the presidency hanging for a day, right? It was a big deal just to leave it hanging for about an hour and a half. We'll get to that later. So they went ahead and did the ceremony officially to make sure it met the requirements of noon on the 20th day of January. So we just knocked that out, got the official one taken care of, and then did the ceremony. So now Congress, who swears in the Speaker of the House? Back to Ventimeter. There we go, trust. You probably recall some of these themes. We'll keep those in mind throughout. Loyalty, promise, trust. All right. All right. Only 11 guesses. Oh, we switching it? I know it's at the end. Changing your option. Well, interestingly, everyone is correct, because it is both the Dean of the House and the person that's been in the office the longest. You got it right. Oh, am I going to go back to the wrong place? Here we go, Dean of the House. So he'll swear in the Speaker, presently Mike Johnson, and then that Dean currently, Al Rogers. But guess what? Even the Dean has to be sworn in as well. So lots of oaths happening. All right, and to be fair, Nancy Pelosi, she likes inviting kids up to take the oath with her. Well, just participate, just be there, right? I mean, she really likes kids being there. I mean, okay, why not have kids there? All right. Nothing wrong with that? Well, then what? Then, like, who's going to swear in all the House members? This one might be more obvious. The Speaker. So they'll probably swear in the Speaker first and then turn right around, swear in all those House members. There's a lot of them, though. Interestingly, you'll see as well some individual ceremonial, perhaps, swearing in. I mean, if you get somebody new, that's a good photo op, good publicity, right? Just the kind of the one-on-one setting there instead of everybody en masse being sworn in. So I like this one, just of all the options I could have picked. I like that one. All right. So I showed you the statute earlier. We'll call it 3331. For the Senate, this will look a lot like 3331. So no surprise what kind of oath they take. But who swears in the senators? Right. Well, who's the president of the Senate? I think that would be the vice president. Maybe the vice president isn't always available. So we've got the short version, President Pro Tem, we'll just say. I'm looking around for the pronunciation of that word, and I just couldn't find it. So I was like, never mind. I'll use the shortened version. It's okay. So in any case where we need someone to administer the oaths, we got a backup plan in the Senate. All right, and I got a fun little video of Biden doing some swearing in.
Oh, wait, that makes a swear in. I tell you what, easy to swear at you. I tell you what, man, I may be arguing, but I'm not stupid. Oh, excuse me, that's the oath. And repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear? Not repeat after me. Well, let's do it again. No, you got it right. You're being sworn in.
Yes. Oh, you're
Okay.
swearing.
I am not doing that.
Yes, you are, as part of the job.
Constitutionally required. I like kids better than people. Oh man, this is boring. Isn't this boring? Charlie, this is boring. Come on.
Hello, Charlie.
Charlie, how you doing, man? Charlie, I remember you in your president. Ready? Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution? That's what you do.
He's a good man, even though he's doing great.
Betty, how are you? My name is Joe Biden, Vice President Biden. How are you? I don't have time. Grandson, best guy in the United States Senate. I love you. Congratulations. All right, thank you.
At least he makes it fun. I enjoy particularly the banter between him and Lindsey Graham. Those were good ones. Clips. All right. I'll tell you what, the justices and the judges, more complicated than I expected when I started this. So you've got the 3331, the constitutional oath, but they also take a judicial oath, different, statute there. So 2 oaths. And that second one, a little excerpt, right? Stuff you probably won't see elsewhere. Without respect to persons, right? Equal to whether you're poor or rich. So hopefully we can have faith in those decisions, being absent of those things. Right? Also learned about this investiture thing. I'm not like judicial politics or anything. That's not my area of focus. So it was interesting to learn about this investiture piece. Although it's changed a bit, right, back and forth a little. And again, you can see there's these examples of public and private oaths. Some perhaps more ceremonial, just for the people to see. Some privately, just to get it officially knocked out. All right. And then I found an interesting question, because maybe a few semesters ago, I had a student ask me about the first time we elected senators, because we had to get on this 6-year rotation, 1/3 every time. So they just drew lots. Somebody got stuck with 2 years, and some people got stuck with 4 years. It's a full 6. So, but who's going to administer oaths the first time we have Supreme Court justices? Who's available to do that? So one example, right? Justice Wilson, he just got, right, some mayor from Philadelphia. Why not? That's where the convention was, I guess. So maybe it didn't matter too much. And then as I'm doing some research on things, I found, Justice Breyer, he seemed to really like taking some oaths. So he gets the word, you're in. He's like, oh man, Chief Justice Rehnquist, not far away. So he's like, I'll just drive there. Good thing you didn't get into an accident on the way there or something. We're getting sworn in. So he just decides to drive there and take the oath. And don't forget about all the ceremonial stuff or investiture, all that. Well, he still got around to that later anyways. But he must have really wanted, he was excited, I guess, just to really get in there and get going. All right. And that's him on the right swearing in our most recent Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. All right, executive branch administrators. I chose Mayorkas because, well, we'll talk about impeachments later, and recently impeached by the House, but dismissed as unconstitutional, so whatever. So, executive branch folks will get sworn in, but then guess what? They'll turn right around and swear in their folks. So you can just kind of see how some of these things progress. And I did find it interesting, if I can get this up reasonably well. Yes, exactly. This was like a group swearing in. We tend to see more about individual, maybe perhaps for the photo ops, but there's just a whole group of them there, including his brother in the mix. But they had a big ceremony for all that. All right. Get to removals. I'll leave that right there. All right. Other swearing in. We had somebody in the crowd took an oath of enlistment. I did as well. And whether this is maybe a mindset of others, we see these other positions where they take oaths of office and oaths to the Constitution. For veterans, at least, that's something that kind of sticks with you, lifelong oath, and just those values and convictions. They tend to stick with you beyond service. So as a veteran, right, want to do good things. Ask people if you know any veterans. Ask them about their experience at MEPS. I guarantee you'll get at least one good story out of that. It's a process, and it's not always fun. All right? They put you through the ringer there, military entrance processing station. So 2 different O's. Up here, look again, 3331 shows itself yet again for the officers. Slightly different though. I highlighted the differences. Slightly different for the oaths of enlistment. And I said the ROTC, when they graduate and finish the program, every now and then they'll get an invite to show up. Maybe if they're political science or something. And we've got retired Colonel Bob Crawford. After they do the swearing in, he likes to remind the new officers, you're not necessarily swearing an oath to the president or anything like that. It's the Constitution and whatever else it says there. So I like how he ensures to point that out. I leaned on him again for another bit of information later on. All right, state and local folks. I've got some Arkansas examples splashed throughout. All right. So our state assemblies swear in. Recent Speaker of the House for Arkansas. So what do we have for an oath there? We still have the U.S. Constitution, but also you're swearing an oath to the state constitution because you're functioning as someone working for the state government. I found that interesting. All right, current governor. When I first started using this picture, I thought my guy in the middle there might have had a unbuttoned jacket, but I guess sometimes you just button one button, so it's okay. I just thought it was kind of interesting, or maybe goofy or whatever. But that's our current governor. Who else? All right. Police and firefighters. I found these O's to be mixed. Some will include protect and defend the Constitution, some not. It really just depends. Some might mention the state Constitution as well. All right. We force anybody to take an oath. Anybody? Doesn't quite sound right. I don't know. But, right? What do we do when we draft? So it's, at least currently, selective service is still for. So what do we do when we draft folks in the military? At least it's been a while. So I had to ask, I had to look around. It was very difficult to find a very clear answer. Bob Crawford confirmed. I found one little obscure source. Yes, if you get drafted, you still have to take the oath. So that's kind of interesting. So you go into processing, you get a few days, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You're in the military. All right, sacrifice. When we think about the ultimate sacrifice, who comes to mind? Perhaps the military. Yes? Yeah, well, there's others out there. All right. We'll start with presidents. So, we've probably all heard about Lincoln. You know what, I don't think I learned this in the past when they first taught it to me, or it's just been a long time. But originally a kidnapping plan, I didn't recall that. So I found that interesting. Now Booth, you know about him being an actor. So, supporter of the Confederacy. It was interesting to read. He attended that most recent inauguration, and I guess there's some writings from him like, oh, wouldn't have that been a grand opportunity? I guess he was really obsessed. We'll see a common theme from these folks. All right. So interesting also that just not that many days prior, 5 days prior, right, General Lee surrenders. So of course we know Ford's Theater. Garfield. An example I use in classes like public administration, something I borrowed from somebody else. It's an interesting story. This Charles Guiteau guy, lawyer, not a very good one apparently. Maybe had one case and they lost. Then he switched to more of a collections role and was kind of scandalous with that as well. But he went around stumping for Garfield without any official permission or anything. So he really thought he deserved a job in the administration. I guess he wanted some consulate job in Paris or something. Didn't get it. So he was mad. I guess he thought he'd take it out on Garfield. And they shot him. But back then, medical science not that great. So the doctors are probing around, and it's all the germs and everything that really get him eventually. Don't ask me to pronounce Leon's name. But, all right, we can just think about sometimes these presidents, they're just out in public. Garfield at a railroad station. All right, McKinley at a reception. Some guy just walks right up, gun wrapped around in a napkin, shoots him. First shot kind of bounces off the breastplate. Second one hits him in the stomach area. So, I mean, he was upset. Maybe he taking things a little too far in his mind of what his motivations were. But back then, was perhaps the system rigged against certain folks? Probably. To some degree anyways. Okay. But he'd kind of gotten into some things that might have pushed him a little far. Things too far. Assassination's never good. So, candidate and former president Theodore Roosevelt, he says, hey, you guys might want to know I just got shot. He just kept speaking, just kept going. Interesting guy. So this guy claims he had a dream that the formerly assassinated McKinley told him you should do this. So the bullet goes through his speech, through his glasses case, lodges over here, and it stuck with him the rest of his life. So that one's curious. We've all heard about JFK. I wanted to kind of show a bit of a timeline, like the minutes from this point to that point. All right, so 12:30, our starting point. JFK dies 1 p.m.-ish, 1 p.m. Jackie Kennedy didn't really want to leave, so Lyndon Johnson goes off to Air Force One. They need someone to swear him in. There's probably a lot of panic. So here's that hour and a half where we didn't really have a specific solution to things. So they're just looking for some kind of federal judge. So they're making phone calls. Hey, find Sarah Hughes, someone Lyndon Johnson knew. So, all right. Then everybody arrives that needs to be there. And maybe some folks take a few minutes to gather themselves before proceeding. And it was really difficult to find the time between the hospital and the swearing in. So I stumbled across a nice little source here. I had to really zoom in on this timeline. That's just on the airport wall there. So I was happy to fill in some of those gaps in the timeline. Of course, the picture we all know. And I think even still today, the only female to swear in a president. All right, Reagan. Another video, just a little break between the slides and the text.
No matter what type of severe asthma you have, Aspire can help you have fewer attacks and
March 30th, 1981. John Hinckley was a 25-year-old with romantic delusions, convinced that actress Jodie Foster would be impressed if he killed the president. Outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., Hinckley caught up with his target.
And I don't think there was a better demonstration of how that training worked than the assassination attempt against President Reagan. Judge Jerry Parr and Ray Shattuck, as soon as the first shot goes off, they grab the president and they throw him into the car.
Agent Tim McCarthy shielded Reagan with his body, taking a bullet in the process. Within moments, the limo sped away from a scene of chaos. Hinckley was buried under a mountain of Secret Service agents. Agent McCarthy, Press Secretary James Brady, and D.C. policeman Thomas Delahanty lay on the sidewalk, severely injured. All three survived, but Brady had permanent brain damage.
The old saying that, a Secret Service agent will take a bullet for the president. If you look at the Reagan assassination, Tim McCarthy did do that, but he was trained to do that as well. And his heroic actions demonstrate that.
Although the agents around the president reacted heroically, many mistakes had been made.
I found that interesting. You could actually just briefly in the video see his hand with the gun. You really have to work hard to pause it, but he was somewhere over by this police officer, one of the people shot, and then towards the vehicle. One of the bullets, the reason Reagan gets hit is because it bounces off the limousine and then kind of gets him at an angle, even though he was kind of shielded by the door. So Brady seemed to be the first one to take a hit from the shots, and then this police officer over here, the Secret Service agent that put himself in the way. So I find it interesting with recent events, of course, the emphasis on the Secret Service in the video, because there's been a lot of review of Secret Service procedures recently. I mean, it's a thing. This happened. It's been since Reagan. I'm sure it was a bit of a shock for Reagan since JFK. But I put these slides together, like I added this picture 4 days ago. Guess what's happened since then? I mean, so don't really have good, I suppose, pictures of the most recent thing, but sometimes it happens. All right, presidential succession. All right. We got the first one right. Speaker of the House, good for the second one. Senate Pro Tem third. And then it starts going down the line of all the cabinet secretaries. Oh, we're going to do that again. All right, so there you go. VP, Speaker, Pro Tem, and on down the line. And, you know, there's only so much time for this presentation. There's been a lot of instances where there's been attempts. Some of them get thwarted rather quickly, and we maybe don't even hardly hear about it. So, I mean, there's quite a list. I just thought I'd go through some of the key examples. All right. Obviously, when you hear ultimate sacrifice, you might think about the military. Heck, these dudes out here guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. That doesn't look like a fun assignment right there. So they're sitting out in the weather. We've tried to protect pictures of the coffins, especially when it comes to transportation, but maybe that's been mixed opinions there. All right, I had to throw in guys from my unit. All right. Shane Duffy, Cody Legs, J.D. Emmerd. All right, I'll talk about the other guy in the top corner there, but usually if I have to do challenging, high-stress things, I bring them with me just to remember it could be worse. Right? A dissertation defense, something like that. They help me out. So the oldest among them, Leg 23. 23. So the other guy, easily, well, not necessarily the full ultimate sacrifice, but he was EOD, bomb disposal, deployment to Afghanistan, lost his legs. So that's a lot of recovery, right? A lot of hard work. Right? Even just get into a vehicle, gotta have good upper body strength, I guess. So it can leave a lasting impact. Lots of hard work. But he tried rugby, but he said he didn't enjoy that. But then he found hockey, loved it, and I was very proud to see he made the U.S. Paralympic hockey team. My guy right there. Okay. So that's awesome to see, right? And, you know, smart home recipient, I mean, you have these situations, people are usually fairly willing to help out. So again, it's still very cool to see. Others, though, losing your life in the line of duty. Police officers, no doubt. Firefighters, for sure. A friend, his dad died of cancer from many years of firefighter service. So, you know, even just if he's not there in the moment, maybe down the road, might suffer from some of that. All right, okay, graphic image. I try not to shy away from those sometimes, just depends. Even somebody working in the executive branch. Ambassador Stevens, right? Ambassador to Libya. So we had folks there, Benghazi. There was an attack on the consulate and stuff. Maybe a bit controversial as to what sparked that. I'll stay away from that. So 4 folks, Stevens, Sean Smith, a computer guy, and then 2 basically CIA security contractors, right? They made a movie about this. There's a few things in there in my whole slide set. Movies. I don't know, scandals maybe make for good movies sometimes. So, transitioning to scandals, right after the fallout from Benghazi, current Secretary Clinton goes before Congress. Former Secretary Clinton goes before Congress again. And boy, does that maybe get tiring sometimes. So, hey, you never know. You might get called up to testify. All right, scandals. Last section. So, what really constitutes a scandal? Biden checked his watch? Probably not. Not too terrible, I suppose. So, accusations of wrongdoings, right? Maybe violating your oath somehow. Is it going to harm the institutional reputation? What about the individual's reputation? But then, does it get kind of political? Maybe so. there'll be some facts. But then, where does public opinion play into this? Say Iran-Contra. We'll get to that here in a second. Is that something Reagan should have been impeached for? Probably people will say yes. That's quite a thing. All right, but what if we dial it back many years ago? All right, Secretary of Interior, this isn't the President himself, Harding, but his Secretary of Interior, right, bit of a scandal, so bribes, no interest loans, hey, guess what, money? We're gonna see more of that, right? Grant, he's got a couple of them. So his Secretary of War, high prices for goods. And what are they doing with that money? Siphoning profits, more money. All right, Whiskey, so the IRS and Treasury, maybe not doing great things, and more about money. So, do we think about these scandals today? Do they still tarnish the institution today when maybe they're not widely discussed? All right. So, Iran-Contra. You could do probably a whole semester on this, and Watergate, which is the next slide. So, the short version, there's the Iraq-Iran War. Former Soviet Union helping out Iraq. For some reason, I guess we want to help Iran. Maybe just counterbalance that, whatever, geopolitical stuff. So we're shipping arms to Iran. Some of that money going to Nicaraguan Contras, which were basically fighting against the Sandinista government there in Nicaragua and old Oliver North. I wanted to use the picture of him with his hand raised because that's like the lasting, most famous issue probably, but I like this one. I guess back when they used actual photo negatives, which is what I'm assuming those are, just framed up individually. So he's testifying, he's heavily involved. How much of this comes back on Reagan, if anything? So Watergate, maybe we've heard some of this, again, very lengthy. So break-in of the DNC at the Watergate facility in DC. Long chain of events, Saturday Night Massacre, people resigning because they don't want to fire a special prosecutor. But then Robert Bork, later going up from the Supreme Court, probably half the reason why he didn't get on the Supreme Court. He decides, sure, why not fire him? You know, not a good look. I mean, look at the folks involved, former FBI, CIA, just many of our federal institutions in play with these things. So, fairly major erosion of modern trust in several institutions. Nixon eventually resigns on TV, a long-winded rationale that he gives. So, but yeah, last thing, the cover-up is worse than the crime. If you've heard that before, very much amplified by Watergate. All right, impeachment. So the answer, impeachment trial and removed. Well, nobody yet. Andrew Johnson came close. First, if we're talking about oaths,
most things on your ballot.
How do we handle
Their
that?
idea for issue 2 from voters for.
Yeah, this is the Senate Escort Committee bringing in Chief Justice Roberts into the chamber where he will be sworn in to preside over the.
So he goes up.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that.
Where you
I'm going to do announcement here.
Senators, I attend the Senate in conformity with your notice for the purpose of joining with you for the trial of the President of the United States. I am now prepared to take the oath.
Will you place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and in all things appertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws, so help you God.
I do. God bless you. Thank you very much. At this time, I will administer the oath to all senators in the chamber in conformance with Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 of the Constitution and the Senate's impeachment rules. Will all senators now stand or remain standing and raise their right hand?
So he gets sworn in and then turns right around and swears all the senators in. So it's interesting to me, at least, to see that a lot of times someone gets sworn in and they proceed to swear others in. Andrew Johnson. All he did was fire somebody. Maybe he wasn't very well liked either. All right, this Tenure of Office Act. So you couldn't fire somebody from the previous administration. Well, he really wanted to, so he just did it anyways. 1 vote shy of removal, for however many they had at the time. Right. So, years later, the Tenure of Office Act, unconstitutional. So the guy about got kicked out of office for something that would later be deemed unconstitutional. But at the time, it was in effect. So it was applicable. All right. It was a long time before we got to somebody else, Bill Clinton. All right, we've got Monica Lewinsky. She was on the staff at one point voluntarily, then moved up to paid position. So allegations of, improper this or that. But really, is that what we got in terms of an impeachment, improper relations? All right. Well, more about perjury and obstruction. So if he's trying to say, hey, we didn't have some particular relationship or whatnot, so is that perjury? I don't know, what's the evidence say? So some of the phone conversations get handed over, then things proceed forward. Because he did give some testimony, so was that maybe the basis of these charges? So 45 to 55, not really close. Donald Trump, times 2? All right, well, twice. It happened. So first time, there we go. Foreign interference in elections. 2 votes on the 2 counts, pretty close. All right, ignoring evidence, telling people, don't worry about that. All right, second impeachment, January 6th. Use whatever word you like there. I try not to select one or the other or anything. So, well, he was about out of office anyways. And by the time the Senate trial came around, he was just recently out. Maybe was that part of the motivation why more folks were willing to vote? Was it even going to apply to anything, or just more severe of a reason? So controversy all over the place. For the second one, we only recently had this video of Nancy Pelosi. Does it matter now? Whatever. We didn't even have the Chief Justice presiding over that. So the Senate Pro Tem did. All kinds of reasons in the past for impeachment. I found it interesting. Back in the day, several of the judges, right, intoxicated on the bench. Someone stayed on the bench after being criminally convicted. Maybe you shouldn't be in that role anymore. Right? But the key themes are the ones that are the largest: perjury, abuse of power, things like that. Mayorkas is on the list, I mentioned as well, dismissed. So, all right, Trump pretty polarizing. What things does he say? Do we take them out of context or not? The cats and dogs thing from the debate. No. Right? But folks not supportive of Trump might say some interesting things as well. Take from that what you want. So, do any of these things, maybe Trump says or otherwise, are these disqualifying for the January 6th stuff? Is it violations of oaths beforehand, even during? He's promising some kind of revenge tour, perhaps. What does that really look like? So, that's a tough one. Some folks expelled from Congress, many from the Civil War. Recent examples, all right, George Santos, very recent. Money, fraud and misuse of funds. More about money. All right, lots of examples. There's so many I didn't want to just add too many of them in there. So, try to play fair. I picked one from each. You got a Democrat up there, a Republican up there. Plenty of scandals. Again, money, but then sometimes other things. Oh, the Supreme Court. Really? Why would the Supreme Court do anything wrong? Lavish spending. That's going to be a new theme. We'll see in several slides coming up. Well, pictures. So, accusations of lavish trips, property sale. Of course, it was trying to sell something, and then all of a sudden, oh, look, it's sold. Is that the true story? All right. Lots of stuff for the administration, the military, General Services Administration. Do we hear much from them? All right, lavish spending. The government, the Department of Defense, right? Tell you what, we ate pretty well on deployments. Scallops, Sergeant's birthday on Fridays, back in the States. Not much to write home about, so that's okay. So sometimes maybe they splurge. Snowden, NSA, was he worried about inappropriate surveillance or something? Lots of scandals. Banning his post, perhaps. First general order of the Army. Desertion. How do you behave around those who captured him or whatever? So, dismissed eventually. Any kind of Russia collusion or Trump dossier. We had plenty of hearings with Peter Strzok. Those were curious. Abu Ghraib, I spent 3 months at Abu Ghraib. Much after these events transpired, they had us, our barracks were basically the converted jail cells, which was interesting, the bars and everything. All right, local stuff. Oh, Arkansas. Guess what? Money. 3 of them. All right. Tax returns, bribery, taxes not paid, bribery. Right, local. This isn't Arkansas, but what's seemingly fairly legitimate trip to Ghana, but then was there lavish spending? Is that really a scandal? I don't know. All right. Of course, there's instances where police officers maybe don't always do the right thing. All right. So, can we renew our trust in these institutions and the people? And some of those old scandals fade away eventually. I mean, maybe it's only just a few folks, hopefully. So, what are we left with? Can we maintain? Nice quote from Benjamin Franklin, gets quoted every once in a while. Somebody gets stirred up enough. And then just my thoughts went to, what do we need to do to ensure we keep what we have? All right, it made me think of a quote, eternal vigilance is the price we pay. And yes, we're at the end. The last slide, I had a lot of pictures. So I don't always look forward to speeches. I'm just trying to get comfortable with these things. I'm kind of new to this business, so. All right, what's the favorite thing? The end. All right. That's my style. I like a few jokes, a little bit of goofiness in there, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, anybody got any questions for Dr. Button? I had a question. So what would life be like if we didn't make our elected leaders take oaths, in your opinion?
I would say there would probably be less trust. Hopefully the people that take the oaths in the moment realize this is a legitimate obligation. So, I mean, if you think about it as well with the military examples, we see that folks that sign up for the military, again, they rely on each other, especially in situations where lives are on the line, even the Secret Service, right? They know what their job is, and that's a tough assignment. You know, you might have to put yourself in harm's way at some point. So, there might be less trust, less accountability, perhaps. I mean, for the president, we intended to put that and did, and straight into the Constitution. That really says something. And then we passed laws that said you need to take this oath. So by doing that as well, whether it's constitutionally or statutorily, if you're not abiding by those laws, then I guess you're breaking the law. And you might be subject to whatever kind of punishment ensues. So hopefully that helps to increase accountability and just people's trust. Especially when you see that somebody that probably violated their oath actually does see some consequences for that. They'll have their day, you know, whether they're convicted or removed or whatnot, they'll have their day. But at least we see that the process is actually sustained.
Any other questions? Well, go ahead.
Oh, what?
You said that everyone has a fun story from like MEPS or MEPS. What's your fun story?
Some of them.
For those of you who didn't hear, she was asking what was Dr. Button's favorite story from MEPS.
Some of them are not appropriate, but.
Yeah, I don't see how anyone can have any fun stories from MEPS.
The duck walk, how about that? I don't know if I can still do it. I mean, unless other folks didn't have to do that. So you gotta get.
You still do.
You still do. You gotta get way down. Oh, my knees. And you're supposed to walk like a duck, but you can't like bob up and down. So you really gotta take your leg and go like this, but you gotta stay way down there. It's weird.
So it's like a physical fitness.
Yeah, just agility almost, or just the health of your knees. But
Did you okay?
Yeah, I still.
Oh, they did that first. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So the other stuff you probably don't want to hear about. They check out everything about you. Jobs, we'll say this. Okay, a lot of jobs they'll have tests for substance use. All right. Well, at MEPS, there's just basically no privacy for that. We'll put it that way. So that's why I managed to survive with some of these presentations. The military just kind of takes all the shame and embarrassment out of me. I don't care if I misspeak sometimes. Even like my online classes, I don't re-record them. If I slip up, I'll tell them, I'll just keep going. Does that mean I don't get stressed with the presentations? No, I don't. So that's probably as much as I can tell you on that. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on like making the drafted members take the oath? Because I feel like I didn't know that, but I didn't consider that like they're going to be forced to be in the military, and then like the voluntary oath kind of seems like it.
Yeah. So my thoughts, I suppose, go back to the beginning, the social contract. If you want to remain and everything, you know you're going to be subject to that possibility. It's tough because you are kind of forced into taking that oath. But there are, I would say, hopefully still some options, conscientious objection, other options where maybe you can find an alternate path. But otherwise, if you're just kind of going to go with the flow, that's just one other step to go with the flow. Yeah, I guess luckily we've been in modern era, no need for that. Now recruitment numbers have been down, so if we were to get into anything too heavy, would that become an issue if we're down on our numbers? So it could one day come back. I was happy to serve, so that's okay.
Got time for one more question? Okay, well, thank everybody for coming. Thank you very much, Dr.